In the past decade alone, more than 250,000 Jewish people have made their way back to the land of Israel. From the remote regions of India to the highlands of Ethiopia, they are returning, not as tourists, but as descendants of an ancient promise. This mass movement isn't simply political or cultural. It's a living reflection of a prophecy spoken thousands of years ago. Take, for example, the tribe of Manasseh, scattered by the Assyrian Empire nearly 2,700 years ago, now seeing its members return home. Or the Ethiopian Jews, known as the Falashmura, whose long-anticipated return brings to life ancient words written by the prophets. The prophet Ezekiel envisioned a time when the scattered children of Israel would be gathered once again. Today, that vision is unfolding before our very eyes. These are not random events. They are signs. They speak to something greater happening beneath the surface of global headlines. Could they be pointing us towards something even more profound? Perhaps even the return of the Messiah? Stay with us until the end as we explore the deep prophetic meaning behind these modern-day miracles. Let us now journey back to where it all began. Over 4,000 years ago, in a world of pagan idols and tribal loyalties, a man named Abram lived in the land of Ur. Then, something extraordinary happened. God called him. "Leave your country," the voice said. "Go to a land I will show you." No map, no destination, only a promise. Abram obeyed. And from that moment, history changed forever. God made a covenant with Abram, later renamed Abraham. "I will make you into a great nation," God told him. This wasn't just a personal blessing. It was the beginning of a divine plan that would stretch across generations. The promise passed to Abraham's son Isaac, then to Isaac's son Jacob. After a life-altering encounter with God, Jacob was given a new name, Israel. From his 12 sons came the 12 tribes, each one forming a pillar of the emerging nation. But their journey wasn't smooth. A famine drove them to Egypt, where they eventually became enslaved. For centuries, they lived under oppression, their cries for deliverance rising like incense to heaven. God heard. He raised up Moses, a reluctant leader with a powerful calling. Through him, the Almighty unleashed plagues, split seas, and broke chains. The Exodus wasn't just a rescue mission. It was the beginning of a new identity. At Mount Sinai, God gave them more than freedom. He gave them a law, a sacred framework for how to live, love, and worship. These laws weren't rules for the sake of control. They were the foundation of a relationship between a holy God and his chosen people. Even when they faltered, and they did many times, God remained faithful. Under Joshua, they entered the promised land. A land flowing with milk and honey, but also a place of tests, battles, and responsibilities. The people were called to be a light to the nations, a testimony of what it meant to live in covenant with God. And then came a king, a shepherd boy who would unite the tribes and establish Jerusalem as the heart of the nation. His name was David. Under the leadership of King David, the kingdom of Israel reached new heights. Victories were won, enemies pushed back, and Jerusalem was established as the capital. But David's greatest contribution wasn't measured by battles, it was in his heart's desire to build a house for God. Although he would never construct the temple himself, his vision laid the foundation for his son Solomon to fulfill that dream. Solomon, remembered for his wisdom and peace, rose to power and led Israel into what many call its golden age. The nation flourished. Wealth poured in, alliances were formed, and Jerusalem became a beacon of strength and faith. At its center stood the temple, a magnificent structure that symbolized God's presence dwelling among his people. It was a time of peace, prosperity, and divine connection. But even golden ages fade. After Solomon's death, unity collapsed. The kingdom fractured into two parts. 10 tribes in the north forming the kingdom of Israel, and 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, remaining in the south as the kingdom of Judah. This division was more than political. It cut into the nation's spiritual heart. The northern tribes strayed quickly, falling into idol worship and abandoning the covenant that had brought them this far. Their rebellion had consequences. In 722 BCE, the mighty Assyrian Empire invaded. The northern kingdom was crushed. Its people were exiled, scattered, and absorbed into foreign lands. These became known as the Lost Tribes of Israel, their fate cloaked in mystery, their identity dissolved across centuries. The southern kingdom held out longer, but it too faltered. In 586 BCE, the Babylonians swept through Judah. Jerusalem was ravaged. The temple, once the very symbol of divine presence, was reduced to rubble, and the people were taken into exile. For many, it felt like the end. A shattered city, a scattered people, a broken dream. Yet in this darkest hour, the voice of hope refused to be silenced. The prophet Ezekiel, exiled with his people, delivered a vision. A valley of dry bones brought back to life. It was a prophecy of restoration, of a nation reborn. Though Israel was scattered, God's promise remained unbroken. And then came an unexpected act of mercy. Under the Persian king Cyrus, a remnant was allowed to return to Jerusalem. They rebuilt the temple, less grand than Solomon's, but sacred nonetheless. Still, true independence never returned. They remained under foreign control, first by Persia, then Greece, and finally Rome. Then, in 70 CE, another devastating blow, the Roman Empire destroyed the Second Temple. Once again, the Jewish people were scattered. A global dispersion began that would last nearly 2,000 years. This was the beginning of the Great Diaspora. For centuries, the Jewish people lived far from the land promised to their ancestors. They settled in Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Yet no matter where they lived, the longing for Zion never faded. It was sung about in their prayers, remembered at every Passover meal, and whispered in the hearts of generations. Next year in Jerusalem. But the world they wandered through was rarely kind. For hundreds of years, Jewish communities endured waves of persecution. They were expelled from kingdoms, forced into ghettos, banned from owning land, and subjected to brutal violence. Pogroms erupted in villages and cities, designed to terrorize and uproot. Hatred sought to erase their identity. And yet, through it all, the hope lived on. Even in exile, even in grief, Jewish families passed down the promise. Through songs sung in candlelight, through stories told in hushed tones, through tears and traditions, the memory of Israel endured. But nothing could prepare the world for what would come next. In the 20th century, that same hatred reached its darkest and most horrifying form: the Holocaust. In the heart of the 20th century, the world witnessed a tragedy so immense it left permanent scars on the soul of humanity. 6 million Jewish men, women, and children perished in the Holocaust, systematically murdered in one of history's most horrific genocides. Entire communities were wiped out. Families vanished. The weight of this suffering still echoes across generations. And yet, amid the ashes of that darkness, something incredible happened. The Jewish spirit endured. Even in the shadow of death, many held fast to their identity, their faith, and the ancient promise that they would return to the land of their ancestors. For some, the Holocaust did not destroy that hope, it ignited it. The unimaginable suffering became the very catalyst for a new beginning. Then, against all odds, a moment came that changed everything. In 1948, nearly 2,000 years after the fall of Jerusalem, the State of Israel was officially reborn. A people long scattered were finally regathered. From the ruins of war and exile rose a modern nation, standing on the same soil once promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It wasn't merely a political event. It was the revival of an ancient covenant. As the world looked on, the words of the prophet Ezekiel came to life. "I will take you from among the nations and gather you out of all countries and bring you into your own land." Ezekiel 36:24. The birth of modern Israel was nothing short of miraculous. It signaled that something divine was at work, something foretold centuries before. The Jewish people weren't just reclaiming territory. They were stepping into a story far greater than any one generation. A story written by the hand of God. This new chapter also marked the rise of Zionism, a movement not just rooted in politics, but in prophecy. At its heart, Zionism was about restoration, a return to identity, to purpose, to homeland. And starting in 1948, that return began to accelerate. Jews from every corner of the earth, Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, the Americas began making Aliyah, the journey back to Israel. This wasn't just migration. It was a spiritual homecoming. It was prophecy unfolding in real time. The return of the Jewish people became a global story. Not of conquest, but of fulfillment. It revealed a powerful truth: that even after centuries of exile, God had not forgotten his promise. And that promise, it was alive. Today, that return is still happening. It's not a historical memory, it's a living movement. A movement that fulfills words spoken thousands of years ago. Let's now take a closer look at some of the most powerful modern fulfillments of these ancient prophecies. Consider the tribe of Manasseh, one of the 10 northern tribes exiled by the Assyrians over 2,700 years ago. Thought lost to history, their descendants wandered across Asia and eventually settled in India. Known today as the Beni Manasseh, these communities preserved their customs, their prayers, and their identity, even in isolation. And now, in a time where their story could have easily faded, something extraordinary has happened. Thousands of them have returned to Israel. This isn't just a cultural phenomenon. It's the closing of a centuries-old chapter, a prophecy fulfilled in our time. A people exiled for millennia are being restored. Their journey echoes with the promise once made to their ancestors: "You will return." And they are. But the story doesn't stop there. In recent years, Jews from France have begun returning to Israel in growing numbers. In 2021 alone, immigration from France surged by 137%. Behind the statistics lies a deeper story of shifting societies, rising tensions, and a renewed desire to reconnect with something eternal. These modern migrations are more than headlines. They are signs. Signs that prophecy is not frozen in time, but active, living, unfolding right now. Each returning family, each step taken toward Israel, speaks of something far greater than geopolitics. It speaks of God's faithfulness, a covenant still in motion. From the streets of Paris to the shores of Tel Aviv, the momentum of return is unmistakable. In a single year, more than 6,000 new immigration cases were opened by French Jews seeking to make Aliyah the journey home to Israel. It's more than a migration. It's a prophetic acceleration. A response to rising uncertainty, social tensions, and an undeniable pull towards something ancient and sacred. This movement is driven not only by history, but by faith, a recognition that the long-promised return is not only possible, but urgent. One of the most remarkable chapters in this story comes from the highlands of Ethiopia. For centuries, the Jewish people of Ethiopia, believed to be descendants of the lost tribes of Israel, lived in near-complete isolation. Generation after generation, they preserved the traditions of their ancestors, observing the Sabbath, following dietary laws, maintaining rituals that linked them directly to the roots of ancient Israel. They endured hardships. Many were pressured or forced into conversion. Yet through it all, they remained steadfast. Their faith survived. Their identity remained unshaken. Then, in 1991, something extraordinary happened. In a covert operation known as Operation Solomon, later remembered as Operation Dove's Wings, over 14,000 Ethiopian Jews were rescued in a dramatic airlift. It was one of the largest and fastest rescue missions in history, an event that seemed to echo the miracles of the past. Planes flew in and out of Addis Ababa in a matter of hours, carrying entire families to their new home. Today, more than 150,000 Ethiopian Jews now live in Israel. Their return is a testament to perseverance, divine orchestration, and prophetic fulfillment. Though they faced challenges integrating into a modern society, they have become teachers, artists, soldiers, and citizens, contributing to the living fabric of a nation reborn. More recently, Operation Zur Israel brought another wave of Ethiopian Jews home. Over 300 individuals, many separated from loved ones for decades, were reunited with their homeland. As they stepped off the planes, some knelt and kissed the soil. Others blew the shofar. Tears flowed freely. It wasn't just a reunion. It was the end of a long exile and answer to generations of prayer. And the story doesn't stop there. In Eastern Europe, the war in Ukraine triggered yet another wave of return. Over 130 Ukrainian Jews, fleeing instability and violence, found refuge in the land of their ancestors. Coordinated by both Jewish and Christian humanitarian groups, their journey echoes the prophetic words of Isaiah. I will bring your children from the east and gather you from the west. Isaiah 43:5. The prophetic vision is being fulfilled not in myth, but in motion. Even from the comfort and stability of North America, the call is being heard. In a single special flight, 2,000 Jews from the United States and Canada arrived in Israel. Among them were doctors, educators, students, and soldiers, all stepping into a legacy much greater than themselves. They weren't fleeing persecution, they were answering destiny. From every continent, the return continues. Latin America, Europe, Asia, Africa. The names are many, but the story is one. One people, one promise, one homeland. Each returning soul is a living witness that the covenant made long ago still lives. The diversity of those arriving, their languages, cultures, and customs only confirms the global scope of what the prophets foretold. These are not isolated events. They are part of a divine blueprint, ancient words unfolding on the stage of modern history. The return of the Jewish people to Israel is not merely a chapter in a textbook. It is the fulfillment of prophecy written thousands of years ago, happening now in real time. For centuries, ancient prophecies written across the pages of Scripture have waited silent, but not forgotten. And now, in our time, those very words are coming alive. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, verses 21-22, we find a stunning declaration. I will gather the children of Israel from among the nations. They shall no longer be two nations, nor divided into two kingdoms ever again. This is more than poetic language. It's a direct proclamation from God, a vision of unity, of restoration, of a scattered people coming together once more as one. And what seemed impossible for centuries is now unfolding before our eyes. From every corner of the globe, Jewish people are returning not to separate lands, but to a united Israel. The prophet Isaiah echoes this same promise in chapter 11, verse 12. He will assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. From Europe, North Africa, Asia, and the Americas, this global gathering is taking place. These aren't random migrations. They are movements with divine fingerprints, physical, spiritual, and prophetic. But the story doesn't end with return. It leads somewhere even greater. In the New Testament, the book of Revelation offers a glimpse into a future event that adds profound weight to these signs. In Revelation 7:4-8, we are told about 144,000 individuals, sealed servants of God, coming from the 12 tribes of Israel. The passage might seem symbolic at first glance, but it doesn't use vague language. It names each tribe specifically. It gives numbers. It points to something real, structured, and intentional. Why does this matter? Because it reveals that God's plan for Israel is not finished. Before the final chapters of history unfold, the 12 tribes once lost, scattered, and divided will be restored. The 144,000 are not a mystery army. They are a prophetic people, called and chosen for a specific purpose in the end times. They will go into the world during a time of great trial, proclaiming the message of salvation. Their mission won't be political, it will be spiritual. They will be voices of truth when the world needs it most. This restoration, the return to the land, isn't only about geography or citizenship. It's a divine setup. It's preparing the way for the ultimate fulfillment of God's redemptive plan for the world. So when we witness Jewish families returning to Israel, when we see the descendants of ancient tribes gathering once more on the soil of their ancestors, we are witnessing far more than a headline. We are watching prophecy in motion. The return is not simply a national revival. It's a signal that the pages of prophecy are turning once again. That the promises of old are being fulfilled, one by one. And that something far greater is approaching on the horizon. Yet, even as the prophecy of the 144,000 is written so clearly, it remains one of the most misunderstood elements in biblical teaching. Throughout history, interpretations of biblical prophecy have varied. Some religious groups, such as Jehovah's Witnesses, suggest that the 144,000 mentioned in the book of Revelation represent a symbolic group, an elite class of spiritual believers. Others, like the Seventh-day Adventists, view the number as representing those who honor specific practices like the Sabbath. But when we turn to the text of Revelation chapter 7, something becomes clear. This isn't abstract poetry or hidden allegory. The names of the tribes are listed one by one: Judah, Reuben, Gad, Asher, and so on. These aren't symbols. These are literal descendants. Real tribes, real people. The passage leaves little room for metaphor. It points directly to a restoration of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 144,000 are not a metaphorical group. They are a part of God's tangible, unfolding plan. This number matters not because it excludes others from salvation, but because it confirms something vital: that God has not forgotten Israel. That even after centuries of dispersion, the covenant remains. Understanding this helps us grasp the magnitude of the moment we are living in. These individuals will play a vital role in what Scripture describes as the end-time events. Their presence, their sealing, their mission, these are not fictional or symbolic elements. They are steps in the fulfillment of promises made thousands of years ago. And as we witness more and more Jewish people returning to their ancient homeland, it is time to reflect not just politically or historically, but theologically. Despite centuries of resistance, confusion, and even rejection of the Messiah, Israel has not been cast aside. The Apostle Paul, writing in Romans chapters 9 through 11, reminds us of this powerful truth. The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. God's covenant with Israel wasn't based on perfect obedience. It wasn't cancelled by mistakes or time. It was rooted in God's unchanging nature, His mercy, His purpose, and His unbreakable faithfulness. So when a Jewish family steps off a plane in Tel Aviv, when a descendant of Manasseh walks the soil of Israel for the first time in 2,700 years, when a synagogue is opened in a new neighborhood built by immigrants from around the world, these are not just moments of history. They are theological statements. They declare that the God of Abraham still keeps His promises. The return to Israel is more than a geographical journey. It's a prophetic confirmation that God's word stands firm. Each immigrant is not just a citizen, but a witness. A living testament to the truth that God never forgets His people. This return isn't about politics. It's about prophecy. It is not simply a matter of migration. It's the unfolding of a story written long ago, a story still being written today. And as we reach the present moment, we must recognize what all of this points toward. The restoration of Israel is more than fulfillment, it is a signpost. A divine message to the world. It tells us that we are nearing the culmination of history. That the return of the 12 tribes may indeed signal the approach of something greater, the return of the Messiah. The signs are all around us. So now is not the time to stand by. Now is the time to watch, to discern, to align our hearts with God's plan. The return of the Jewish people is not just a historical fact, it is a prophetic call. Could it be that the return of the tribes marks the nearing of the final hour? Only God knows the exact time. But one thing is certain, He is not finished with Israel. And He is not finished with the world. This is not just a chapter in human history. It is the unfolding of divine destiny. Are you ready? Let this moment awaken your spirit. Let the fulfillment of prophecy move you not toward fear, but toward faith. Not toward speculation, but toward preparation. Because the story is still being written and your part in it may be closer than you think.